Imagine you are driving home after a long day, focused on nothing more than getting safely to your destination, when suddenly flashing red and blue lights appear in your rearview mirror. In an instant, everything changes. Your grip tightens on the steering wheel, your thoughts scatter, and your heart begins to race. You pull over expecting a routine interaction, but instead of local police, the person approaching your window represents immigration enforcement. That moment of uncertainty is where everything can either stay under control or spiral quickly into something far more serious. What most people don't realize is that these encounters are not just about what officers do, but about how individuals respond under pressure. In those first few seconds, fear and confusion take over, and that's exactly when critical mistakes happen. Small decisions, casual words, or instinctive reactions can shift the entire direction of the situation. What could have been a temporary stop can escalate into a long-term legal problem, simply because of how the moment was handled. The reality is that there are specific psychological traps built into these encounters. These are not always obvious, and they don't feel like traps in the moment. They feel like normal conversation, natural reactions, or even attempts to defend yourself, but each one has the potential to work against you if you're not prepared. Understanding these patterns ahead of time is what gives you control when everything else feels uncertain. One of the most common mistakes begins the moment the stop starts: the urge to argue. When people feel that something is unfair, their instinct is to speak up, to challenge authority, and to try to correct what they believe is wrong. It feels justified, and in many cases, it may be justified. But the roadside is not the place where disputes are resolved. It is not a courtroom, and it is not a setting where logic and debate lead to immediate outcomes. As soon as an argument begins, the dynamic of the interaction changes. What might have started as a routine stop becomes tense. The officer shifts focus from simply completing the stop to maintaining control and ensuring safety. Every movement, every word, and every tone is now interpreted through that lens. Even harmless actions can be perceived as suspicious when the situation escalates. In that moment, the most effective approach is not to win an argument, but to manage the encounter. Controlling your tone, keeping your movements calm and deliberate, and limiting what you say can prevent unnecessary escalation. It is not about agreeing with anything that feels wrong. It is about recognizing that the time to challenge the situation comes later, not during the stop itself. Another subtle but powerful trap is casual conversation. It often begins with simple, friendly questions that seem harmless. Questions about where you are coming from, where you are going, or who owns the vehicle can feel like routine small talk. Because these questions feel normal, people respond automatically, without realizing the potential consequences. The problem is not the questions themselves, but what those answers can lead to. When someone is nervous, their ability to think clearly is reduced. Details can become inconsistent, timelines can get mixed up, and statements may not align perfectly. These inconsistencies can then be used to justify further questioning or prolong the stop. Even more importantly, casual conversation can lead to unintended admissions. A person might share information about their background, their activities, or their status without realizing that those statements could later be used against them. What feels like a polite response in the moment can become a critical piece of evidence later on. There is also a strategic element to these questions. They can be used to extend the duration of the stop while decisions are being made behind the scenes. The longer the interaction continues, the more opportunities there are for additional actions to be taken. This is why controlling the flow of communication is so important. A calm and consistent response is one of the most effective ways to handle this situation. Repeating a clear statement that you are choosing not to answer questions establishes your position without escalating tension. It removes ambiguity and prevents your words from being used in unintended ways. While it may feel uncomfortable to remain silent in the face of repeated questions, that discomfort is temporary and it serves a purpose. Another critical moment comes when permission is requested to search. This request is often phrased in a way that sounds casual or even polite. It may not feel like a formal request, and that is exactly why it can be so easy to respond without thinking carefully. The wording can be confusing, and a simple yes or no can be interpreted in ways you did not intend. The key here is clarity. Vague responses leave room for interpretation, and interpretation rarely works in your favor in these situations. A clear and direct statement that you do not consent to a search removes that ambiguity completely. It is a simple sentence, but it carries significant weight because it defines your position without room for misunderstanding. Following that, asking whether you are free to leave is equally important. It signals that you are aware of the limits of the situation and that you are not agreeing to extend the encounter unnecessarily. If the stop has fulfilled its original purpose, there is no reason for it to continue. This question brings that issue into focus. Movement during these encounters is another factor that can dramatically influence how things unfold. Sudden or unexpected actions can create a sense of uncertainty, and uncertainty can quickly turn into perceived threat. Even reaching for something as routine as a document can be misinterpreted if it is not done carefully. This is why deliberate and communicated movement is essential. Letting the officer know what you are about to do before you do it reduces the chance of misunderstanding. It keeps the situation predictable and controlled, which benefits everyone involved. The goal is to eliminate surprises and maintain a calm environment. There are also situations where compliance is required, even if it feels inconvenient or unnecessary. Being instructed to exit a vehicle is one of those situations. Refusing to comply in that moment does not strengthen your position. Instead, it introduces a new level of conflict that can escalate quickly. Understanding when to comply and when to assert your rights is a critical part of navigating these encounters. For passengers, the situation can feel confusing. There may be a belief that because they were not driving, they are free to leave or not involved. However, during a stop, everyone in the vehicle is subject to the same situation. Attempting to leave without permission can create additional complications that could have been avoided. One of the most misunderstood aspects of these encounters is the role of silence. Many people believe that simply staying quiet is enough to protect their rights. While silence can be helpful, it is not always sufficient on its own. There are situations where rights need to be clearly and explicitly stated in order to be fully recognized. This means that relying solely on silence can create uncertainty about your intentions. Clearly stating your decision to remain silent and your request for legal representation removes that uncertainty. It establishes a clear boundary and ensures that your position is understood. What makes this particularly important is that different situations can be interpreted differently depending on how they unfold. Being explicit eliminates confusion and provides a stronger foundation for protecting yourself later on. It is not about saying more, but about saying the right things at the right time. When everything is considered together, a pattern begins to emerge. Each of these moments, arguing, answering casual questions, giving unclear consent, making sudden movements, or relying on silence alone, represents a point where control can be lost. But each one also represents an opportunity to maintain control if handled correctly. The individuals who navigate these encounters most effectively are not the ones who try to out-argue or outmaneuver the situation. They are the ones who remain calm, consistent, and aware of their actions. They understand that the goal is not to win in the moment, but to avoid making mistakes that could have long-term consequences. Preparation plays a crucial role in this. Knowing ahead of time how to respond removes the need to improvise under pressure. It allows you to act with intention rather than react out of fear. When your responses are already decided, the situation becomes far less overwhelming. There is also a mental shift that needs to happen. Instead of viewing the encounter as a confrontation, it helps to see it as a process that needs to be managed carefully. This perspective reduces emotional reactions and keeps the focus on making decisions that protect your interests. Every word spoken during these moments matters. Every action taken is observed and interpreted. By keeping communication minimal, movements controlled, and responses consistent, you reduce the number of variables that can work against you. Simplicity becomes a powerful tool. At the same time, it is important to remember that these encounters are temporary. No matter how intense they feel in the moment, they will come to an end. The way you handle them determines what happens afterward. A calm and controlled approach can prevent a temporary situation from becoming a lasting problem. Awareness is what turns a stressful encounter into a manageable one. When you recognize the patterns, understand the traps, and know how to respond, you take back control. Instead of reacting to the situation, you guide your actions with purpose. As you reflect on this, consider how easily any of these mistakes could happen without preparation. They are not the result of bad intentions, but of natural human reactions under stress. That is why learning and understanding these concepts ahead of time is so valuable. If this information has opened your eyes to how these situations unfold, then you are already one step ahead. The more you think about it now, the more prepared you will be if you ever face it in real life. And preparation is what makes the difference between panic and control. There is always more to learn about how to handle different types of encounters, and building that knowledge over time strengthens your ability to stay composed under pressure. The goal is not just to avoid mistakes, but to move through these situations with confidence and clarity. If you found this valuable, take a moment to reflect on the key ideas and how they apply in real life. Small adjustments in behavior can have a major impact when it matters most. Stay aware, stay calm, and always think one step ahead.